When a military working dog saves his handler's life in Afghanistan, their bond becomes unbreakable. But as Sergeant Nathan Carter rebuilds his life from a wheelchair, a shadowy organization is determined to reclaim Lightning, not as a beloved companion, but as something far more dangerous. What they don't realize is that Lightning's most extraordinary ability isn't what shows up in their classified files. The desert stretched out like an endless canvas of brown and tan. Nathan Carter squinted against the harsh sunlight, his rifle held tight against his chest. The convoy moved slowly through terrain that seemed to breathe danger with every passing moment. Lightning sat beside him, alert, his German shepherd coat dusty, but his eyes sharp, constantly scanning the horizon. The young dog had been with the unit for less than 6 months, but something about him was different. Where other military working dogs seemed routine, Lightning moved with a purpose that went beyond training. His muscles coiled with an intensity that spoke of something deeper. It was their 3rd patrol that week, the kind of mission that felt like holding your breath for hours, waiting for something to break. Nathan's hand rested briefly on Lightning's head, a connection that went beyond words, between a soldier and his canine partner. "You've got a feeling, boy," he murmured, his voice low and gravelly. Lightning's ears perked forward, his body going absolutely still. Nathan had seen that stance before, the way Lightning's muscles tensed, how his head tilted slightly to the left, tracking something invisible to human eyes. Experienced soldiers trusted their dogs more than any radar or satellite technology. Lightning wasn't just scanning, he was warning. The convoy slowed. Nathan's grip on his rifle tightened, his breath catching in his throat. Lightning let out a low growl, so subtle most would have missed it, but Nathan heard everything. The dog's warning was like a whisper of danger, cutting through the desert's oppressive silence. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Lightning's body was a coiled spring of tension, his muscles tight, his gaze locked on a point just beyond the convoy's lead vehicle. Nathan's instincts screamed, "Match the dog's warning." Something was wrong. Something was coming. Then it happened. The ground beneath the lead vehicle erupted in a violent explosion, dust and metal twisting into a horrific dance of destruction. Lightning lunged forward, not away from the danger, but directly into it, pulling Nathan down as shrapnel sliced through the air where he had been standing moments before. In that moment, their bond was forged, not just as soldier and service dog, but as survivors, as partners, as something far deeper than any military training could explain. Lightning's body shielded Nathan, his growl turning into a protective roar as chaos erupted around them. It was the first of many times the dog would save his handler's life. When the dust settled, Nathan's hand found Lightning's fur, checking for injuries, checking for connection, checking to ensure they had both survived the moment that would define everything that came after. Their first dance with death. Their first true understanding that they were more than just a soldier and a dog. They were brothers. The explosion echoed in Nathan's memories long after the dust had settled. The scorched metal of the armored vehicle still haunted his dreams. Lightning was there that day too, his fur singed, his body trembling, but his eyes locked on Nathan with an unwavering intensity. The battlefield had fallen silent, except for the ringing in Nathan's ears and the labored breathing that struggled to escape his battered lungs. He remembered the moment like a photograph burned into his mind. The IED had come out of nowhere. Lightning had been at his side moments before the world erupted into chaos. The dog's warning bark had been milliseconds too late to prevent the blast, but just enough to save Nathan's life. In those critical moments, Lightning had dragged him from the burning wreckage, his teeth gripping Nathan's tactical vest, pulling with a strength that defied his training, defied everything except pure survival. The hospital was a blur of white walls and antiseptic smell. Nathan's body, a map of wounds and broken promises. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about potential paralysis, about the miracles of survival, but all Nathan could hear was the memory of Lightning's bark, the feel of his fur, the warmth of his presence when everything else had gone cold. Lightning stayed by his bedside through weeks of recovery, through nights of endless pain and silent screams. The dog never left. Not for a moment. His presence was more healing than any medication, more comforting than any human touch. Physical therapy was a battlefield of its own. Nathan's legs refused to cooperate, muscles that once carried him through combat zones now trembling with the simplest movement. Lightning watched every session, his eyes following Nathan's struggle. Never pitying, always encouraging. Each small movement was a victory. Each attempt a testament to their shared resilience. The doctors called it rehabilitation. Nathan and Lightning called it survival. The wheelchair became Nathan's new weapon, his mode of transportation, his statement to the world that being broken didn't mean being defeated. Lightning adapted too, his movements synchronized with Nathan's, learning to guide, navigate, protect, just as he had done on the battlefield. Their bond wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about rebuilding, redefining purpose. Lightning wasn't just a service dog. He was a lifeline, a bridge between the man Nathan was and the man he was becoming. Some nights, when the memories crashed like waves, Nathan would find Lightning pressed against his side. His warm body a shield against the darkness, a living reminder that survival wasn't just about breathing. It was about moving forward, about finding hope in the most unexpected places. The scars told a story of survival, of a bond that went beyond the conventional understanding of partnership between a soldier and his dog. As the months passed, Nathan realized something profound. Lightning hadn't just saved his life that day in Afghanistan. He had given him a new one. A chance to understand that wounds, whether physical or invisible, could be transformed into strength, into purpose, into something beautiful. Nathan's hand would often rest on Lightning's head in those quiet moments. A silent thank you, a promise that they would face whatever came next together. Because that's what true partnership meant. That's what true survival looked like. The morning light crept through the worn curtains of Nathan's small apartment, the kind of light that seemed to expose every crack, every imperfection, just like the world seemed to expose every wound he carried. Lightning lay beside his wheelchair, his body pressed close, a constant reminder that he wasn't alone. The wheelchair sat near the window, a silent testament to the life Nathan had lost and the one he was struggling to rebuild. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the coffee mug. Memories flickered like broken film reels, explosions, dust, the screams of his team, the moment everything changed. Lightning's ears perked up, his body shifting closer, sensing the rising tide of Nathan's emotions. Nathan's breath caught in his chest. "You're okay, boy," he whispered, his voice rough with emotions he couldn't quite name. Lightning's head rested on his knee, a weight both heavy and comforting. The job rejection letter sat on the kitchen counter, another reminder of the civilian world's inability to understand what he had been through. 3 interviews, 3 polite smiles, 3 variations of "we'll call you," which always meant, "we won't." Military experience, they'd say, looking at his wheelchair as if it were a limitation, not a badge of survival. Lightning nudged his hand, pulling him from the spiral of thoughts. His service dog knew the signs of approaching darkness, knew how to pull him back from the edge. Outside, the world continued its relentless motion. Cars passed, people walked, lives moved forward, while Nathan felt trapped between what was and what could never be again. Lightning stood suddenly, his body alert, his movement deliberate. Nathan recognized that stance from 100 missions in Afghanistan. The dog wasn't just a companion. He was a lifeline, a bridge between the nightmare of war and the uncertain promise of survival. The apartment felt like a battlefield of a different kind. Scattered medical papers, wheelchair modification forms, veteran support group brochures, each a reminder of the life he was trying to reconstruct. Lightning moved between the papers, nudging some aside, creating small paths as if clearing a route through emotional debris. Nathan watched his movements, a ghost of a smile crossing his scarred face. "You're still on mission, aren't you?" he murmured. Lightning looked up, their eyes meeting in a moment of pure understanding. No words could capture the depth of their connection. A notification pinged on his phone, another veteran support group meeting, another chance to reconnect, another opportunity to prove he wasn't broken. Lightning pressed closer, his warm body a constant reminder that broken was the last thing Nathan was. His service dog, his partner, his reason to keep moving forward. The day stretched before them, uncertain, but not hopeless, and together, they would face whatever came next. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, crisp and official, the kind of envelope that made Nathan's hands tremble before he even opened it. Lightning sat beside his wheelchair, his body tense, as if he could sense the weight of the words about to unfold. Nathan's fingers traced the military letterhead, the seal of the Department of Defense pressed into the corner of the envelope. His breath caught in his chest as he carefully broke the seal. The room felt suddenly smaller, the walls closing in with each word he read. Lightning nudged his hand gently, his cold nose pressing against Nathan's trembling fingers. The dog's eyes were sharp, watchful, understanding more than any human could. Lightning had been more than a service dog, more than a companion. He had been Nathan's lifeline, his salvation in moments when survival seemed impossible. The letter was clinical, precise in its language. Sergeant Nathan Carter, your military working dog designated K9-247, Lightning, will be reassigned to active service effective immediately due to exceptional performance metrics and current operational requirements. The military reserves the right to reclaim government assets as deemed necessary. Nathan's jaw tightened. Government assets, he repeated the words quietly, as if they could somehow make them less painful. Lightning wasn't an asset. He was family. He was the reason Nathan was alive, the reason he found purpose after the war. Memories flooded back, the dusty mountains of Afghanistan, the explosive that had torn through their convoy, Lightning's incredible warning moments before the blast, pulling Nathan from certain death, saving not just his life, but his soul. When everything else had been stripped away, now they wanted to take him away, like he was nothing more than a piece of equipment. Nathan wheeled himself to his desk, pulling out a thick folder, meticulously maintained documentation of every mission, every life-saving intervention, every moment Lightning had proven himself beyond a simple military working dog. Medical reports, commendations, witness statements, each page a testament to their bond. Lightning sat nearby, his ears perked, his body alert, as if understanding the gravity of what was happening. The first call went to his military lawyer, a contact he'd maintained since his medical discharge, Margaret Reynolds. Her voice was professional, but not without compassion. "This isn't going to be easy, Nathan," she said. "They're treating Lightning like standard equipment, but we both know he's anything but standard." Her words hung in the air, a spark of hope in the growing darkness. Lightning moved closer, pressing his body against Nathan's wheelchair, a physical reminder that, no matter what bureaucratic machinery they faced, they would face it together. Nathan's hand dropped to the dog's head, his fingers running through the short fur, feeling the steady rhythm of Lightning's breathing. This was more than a fight about a dog. This was a fight about everything they had survived, everything they had become. The parking lot was quiet. Too quiet, Nathan thought, as he adjusted his wheelchair. Lightning sat beside him, motionless, his ears pinned back in a way that made the hair on Nathan's neck stand up. Something wasn't right. The black sedan had been parked 3 spaces away for the last 30 minutes, its windows tinted dark enough to obscure any glimpse inside. Lightning's body was rigid, every muscle coiled with an alertness that Nathan had come to trust more than his own instincts. A week ago, the strange interactions had begun, subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A phone call cut short when Nathan entered the room, unexplained packages delivered then quickly retrieved, military files that seemed to vanish as quickly as they appeared. Lightning had been on edge, constantly scanning their surroundings, his growls low and persistent. Nathan reached down, running his hand through Lightning's fur. The dog didn't move, didn't even acknowledge the touch. His focus was absolute, locked on the black sedan. Nathan's military training kicked in, scanning the environment, noting every detail, the precise angle of the car, the way it seemed positioned for a quick exit, the slight movement behind the tinted glass that most would have missed. "Something's wrong, buddy," Nathan whispered. Lightning's ears twitched slightly, the only acknowledgement that he had heard. Something about this surveillance felt different from standard military oversight. This felt personal. This felt targeted. Lightning suddenly stood, his body going from motionless to pure potential energy in a fraction of a second. A low growl rumbled from deep in his chest. Not the warning bark of previous encounters, but something more primal, more dangerous. The car's engine turned over smoothly. Too smoothly. Nathan's hand instinctively moved to the prosthetic attachment on his wheelchair, where he kept a small defensive weapon. Lightning's growl grew louder, cutting through the quiet parking lot like a blade. The car didn't move, didn't approach, it just sat there, running its engine. A statement more than an action, a warning more than a threat. Nathan knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever was coming, it wasn't going to be simple.
And Lightning wasn't going to let it happen without a fight.
The dog's entire body was a coiled spring of muscle and instinct, ready to protect, ready to defend. Their bond was more than companionship. It was survival. It was a promise made in the darkest moments of war, and they both knew something was coming, something that would test everything they had been through together. The courtroom was heavy with silence, the kind that presses down on your chest and makes breathing feel like a task. Every seat was filled, and all eyes were fixed on the man at the center of it all. Sergeant Nathan Carter sat in his wheelchair, dressed in his military uniform, the medals on his chest glinting under the fluorescent lights. His hand gripped the leash of the dog by his side. Lightning, a German shepherd with a calm yet watchful demeanor. To everyone else, Lightning looked like any other military working dog, but to Nathan, he was so much more. He was family. Nathan's jaw tightened as the judge addressed him, reminding him that this might be his final chance to speak. The Army had decided Lightning was to be reassigned, considered government property, needed for another mission. After years of risking their lives together, the thought of losing Lightning now felt like a cruel betrayal.
Nathan's hands trembled as he adjusted his grip on the leash. His voice barely steady enough to speak. "Your Honor," he began, his tone raw with emotion. "Lightning isn't just a military asset.
He saved my life in ways no one here could ever understand. In the field, he pulled me from danger, shielded me from gunfire, even warned me of traps before I could see them. And when I came home, when I couldn't even face myself in the mirror, Lightning was there. He gave me a reason to keep going. Please don't take him from me." The room remained utterly still, the air thick with unspoken sympathy.
Some spectators dabbed at their eyes, while others exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of pity and outrage.
The judge's face remained neutral, his eyes studying Nathan for a long moment before he leaned forward, preparing to deliver his ruling. But before the words could leave his mouth, something unexpected happened. Lightning stood abruptly, yanking the leash free from Nathan's trembling hands.
The dog moved toward the judge, barking sharply, his voice echoing through the courtroom.
The crowd gasped, and the bailiff stepped forward instinctively, though Lightning showed no signs of aggression. His barks were insistent, purposeful, as if he were trying to communicate something urgent. "Lightning!" Nathan called, his voice breaking with panic. But deep down, he knew he had seen this behavior before, countless times on the battlefield. Lightning was not just barking, he was alerting. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. "What's wrong with the dog?" someone whispered from the back row. Nathan's chest tightened as he wheeled himself forward, his voice trembling. "He's not just barking. He only does this when there's danger. He's trained to detect threats, bombs, explosives. Something is wrong. He's trying to warn us about something." The judge froze, his gavel forgotten in his hand. His eyes locked on Lightning. The room fell silent again, except for the dog's barks, echoing like a heartbeat. Whatever Lightning sensed, it wasn't just about Nathan. The dog knew something no one else did. And for the first time that day, Nathan felt a flicker of hope. This wasn't just a goodbye. Something bigger was about to unfold, and Lightning was determined to make them all see it. The safe house was dark, cold, with an emptiness that seemed to breathe. Nathan sat hunched over a collection of documents spread across the worn wooden table. Lightning lay nearby, his body tense, alert, even in moments of apparent rest. The dog's eyes never completely closed, always watching, always sensing. The papers before Nathan told a story far more complex than any legal document could capture. Grainy photographs, military reports, classified memos, all painting a picture of something much larger than a simple dog reassignment. Nathan's hands trembled as he pieced together the fragments. The document spoke of a specialized military program, codenamed Sentinel, experimental training for select military working dogs, designed to develop heightened sensory capabilities beyond normal canine perception. Lightning wasn't just a service dog. He was a prototype, a living weapon with abilities that stretched the boundaries of what anyone believed possible. The photograph caught Nathan's attention again. Lightning, as a young dog, in a sterile white room, electrodes attached to his head, sophisticated equipment surrounding him, monitoring every movement, every reaction. His eyes, even then, sharp and intelligent, held a depth that most would miss. The report margin noted, exceptional neural responsiveness, 97.6% success rate, potential for threat detection beyond current technological limitations. Lightning lifted his head suddenly, his ears perking forward. A low growl rumbled from deep in his chest. Nathan's muscle memory kicked in, years of battlefield training flooding back. His hand instinctively moved toward the weapon tucked beside him. "Something's wrong," he whispered. Lightning's entire body was rigid, muscles coiled, ready to spring. The dog's gaze locked on the window, the safehouse's lone vulnerability. The metallic click was so soft Nathan almost missed it, but Lightning didn't miss anything. The dog was already in motion, lunging toward Nathan, knocking over the chair as a sharp crack split the air. A bullet splintered the window frame where Nathan had been sitting moments before. Lightning's bark was sharp, urgent, a warning that cut through the sudden silence. Nathan rolled, grabbing the documents and his gear in one fluid motion. "Trust me, buddy," he muttered. Lightning's growl deepened, his body positioned between Nathan and the potential threat. They had been discovered. The conspiracy wasn't just watching anymore, they were making their move. Whatever was hidden in those documents, whatever made Lightning so valuable, had just become deadly serious. And they both knew this was far from over. The night was heavy with uncertainty, the kind of darkness that feels like it's watching you. Nathan's hands gripped the steering wheel of the old pickup truck, his knuckles white, his jaw set with a determination that bordered on desperation. Lightning sat in the passenger seat, his body tense, alert, every muscle coiled like a spring, ready to react to the slightest threat. They had been driving for hours since leaving the courtroom, since that moment when everything changed. The mysterious strangers, the threat, the unresolved conflict that hung in the air like thick smoke. Nathan glanced at the rearview mirror, checking for any signs of pursuit. Lightning's ears perked up, his head turning slightly toward the back window, his body going rigid in a way Nathan had seen countless times before in the field. "Something's wrong, buddy," Nathan muttered, his voice low and rough. Lightning let out a low growl, not loud enough to be heard outside the truck, but sharp enough to send a chill down Nathan's spine. He knew that sound, knew what it meant. Danger was close, very close. The truck's engine hummed a steady rhythm against the backdrop of empty rural highways. Nathan had chosen this route carefully, avoiding major roads, avoiding cameras, avoiding anything that might leave a trail. The mysterious organization that wanted Lightning, they wouldn't give up easily. Nathan knew their resources far exceeded his own. His military pension, his disability support, none of it would be enough to fight what was coming. Lightning shifted in his seat, his nose pressed against the window, scanning the darkness outside. His growl grew deeper, more insistent. Nathan's hand moved instinctively to the glove compartment, where he kept a small handgun. Nothing fancy, but something he could rely on, just like he could rely on Lightning, just like Lightning had always relied on him. Their bond wasn't just about survival. It was about trust, about a connection forged in moments where life and death balanced on a razor's edge. The highway stretched before them, empty, save for the occasional road marker blending into the night, a testament to their isolation, their vulnerability, but also their resilience. Nathan's mind raced through the fragments of information he had gleaned about the organization that wanted Lightning. Their interest went beyond a simple military dog. There was something more, something they weren't telling him, something that made Lightning more than just a working animal, more than just a companion. He was a key to something larger, something dangerous. Lightning suddenly sat up, completely alert, his body going from relaxed to combat-ready in a millisecond. Nathan's military training kicked in immediately, scanning the road ahead, checking mirrors, listening for any unusual sounds. "What is it, buddy?" he whispered. Lightning's response was immediate and unequivocal, a sharp bark that carried years of training, years of survival, years of protecting the one person who had never abandoned him. The road ahead seemed to blur, the darkness seemed to close in, and Nathan knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. Because their bond was unbreakable, and no organization, no threat, could ever change that.
The abandoned warehouse looked like a forgotten monument to industrial decay. Nathan's wheelchair moved silently across the concrete floor, lightning pressed close to his side, his body a coiled spring of tension. The air felt heavy with anticipation, charged with an electricity that made the hair on Nathan's neck stand on end. They had been tracking the mysterious organization for weeks, piecing together fragments of information that most would have dismissed as conspiracy theories. But Nathan knew better. Lightning had never been wrong. The metallic click of Nathan's service pistol echoed in the vast space. Lightning's ears perked forward, his entire body locked in absolute focus. Nathan's hands trembled slightly, but his grip remained steady. He had faced death before, in Afghanistan in rehabilitation, and now, here, in this moment that felt like the culmination of everything they had endured together. Lightning growled low, a sound that vibrated through the warehouse walls, a warning more precise than any human communication. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, their movements calculated, deliberate. The leader, Nathan recognized from the courtroom, his face still partially obscured by a heavy hood. Lightning's growl intensified, each sound a razor-sharp warning that cut through the silence. "You're not taking him," Nathan called, his voice steady despite the adrenaline racing through his veins. "Lightning isn't just a dog. He's a living, breathing part of me. You can't just claim him as government property." The leader's laugh was cold, mechanical, devoid of any human warmth. "You misunderstand," he said, his voice calm but laden with something darker. "Lightning is far more than a standard military asset. He's a prototype, something we've invested years developing. His abilities go beyond anything you can comprehend." Nathan's stomach twisted. The man's words carried a weight that suggested truths far more complex than a simple bureaucratic claim. Lightning's body went rigid, his muscles coiled like steel springs, ready to launch. The dog's entire being focused on the threat before them. Nathan had seen this posture countless times in combat zones. A moment before Lightning would save his life, detect an explosive, locate an enemy combatant. Something was coming. Something dangerous. The leader took a step forward, his companions flanking him like shadows. Lightning barked sharp and precise, not a sound of aggression, but of pure alert, the kind of warning that had saved Nathan's life multiple times in the most dangerous terrains of Afghanistan. The warehouse seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment of explosion. The tension was so thick it felt like it could shatter glass with a single sound. Nathan's hand found Lightning's collar, gripping it tightly, a connection that ran deeper than words, deeper than years of service, deeper than the bond between a soldier and his most trusted companion. This was about survival. This was about everything they had been through together, and nothing was going to tear them apart. Not today, not ever. The confrontation was about to begin, and Nathan knew one thing with absolute certainty. Lightning would be right by his side until the very end. The sun was setting when Nathan finally allowed himself to breathe, the weight of the past months lifting like a heavy fog. The small cabin overlooking the mountain valley felt like sanctuary after months of chaos. Lightning sat beside his wheelchair, his body pressed against Nathan's leg, a constant reminder of everything they had survived. The official hearing had concluded just hours earlier, clearing both of them of any wrongdoing. The mysterious organization had been exposed, their illegal operations splashed across every major news network. Nathan's hand moved slowly to rest on Lightning's head, feeling the familiar softness of his fur. The courtroom had been their final battlefield, the place where everything would be decided. Lightning's growls that day had uncovered a conspiracy stretching deep into military intelligence, a secret program experimenting with advanced canine training techniques. Lightning wasn't just a service dog. He was living proof of a program that had gone far beyond its original mandate. The revelations had shocked everyone. The judge, the military officials, the public. Nathan had become more than just a veteran. He was now a whistleblower, a witness to something much larger than himself. Lightning's ears perked up suddenly, his body going rigid. Nathan recognized that stance instantly, the same one that had saved his life countless times on the battlefield, back in Afghanistan, back in those moments when Lightning's instincts meant the difference between life and death, between coming home or not. But this time, there was no danger, just the quiet mountain evening, just peace. "You did it, buddy," Nathan whispered, his voice thick with emotion.
Lightning turned his head slightly, meeting Nathan's gaze. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, understanding. Lightning had always been more than just a dog, more than just a military asset. He was family, he was survival, he was hope. His low growl now was different. Soft, almost like a response, a promise that they were in this together, no matter what came next. The documents they had recovered told a story of experimental training programs pushing the boundaries of what was possible with military working dogs. Lightning represented something revolutionary. A connection between human and animal that went beyond traditional understanding. His abilities weren't just about detection or protection. They were about an almost telepathic understanding, a bond that defied explanation. Outside the cabin, the mountain winds whispered through pine trees, the last rays of sunlight painting everything in golden hues. Nathan felt a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in years. The legal battle, the constant threat, the mysterious organization's pursuit, all of it had culminated in this moment of absolute peace. Lightning shifted slightly, pressing closer, as if sensing Nathan's emotional state. They had survived. They had won. But more importantly, they had done it together. Nathan's hand continued to stroke Lightning's head, his touch gentle but firm, a silent communication that needed no words, no explanation, just pure understanding. Lightning's breathing was steady, rhythmic, a counterpoint to Nathan's own heartbeat. Two survivors, two warriors who had found something more precious than victory. They had found each other. And in this moment that was everything.